What's up everyone, welcome back for another video. Quick video this week. Feel like I've had a lot of quick videos recently. I think people prefer them. I don't know. If you prefer quick videos, let me know in the comments below. If you prefer the ones that go a bit longer, let me know too. I don't, it's hard to know. It's hard to know, like, it's hard to get what's useful, what's not, what length is useful, what's not. Anyway, blabbering too much. This week we're talking about some rope work in probably a series of videos, I think, or like definitely some videos about this. About rope work and knots that we use in whitewater kayaking, what you need to know. I know a lot of kayakers struggle with knot tying, with correct knot tying, with correct knot choices and what they're going to use. And just a few things on knots and that before we get started. Generally speaking, ropes and water is not a good combination. It's easy for things to get out of control, and it's easy for that to create entanglement issues and hazards down the line. If you're using ropes with water, you should always have a knife with you. And I've said this before and I'm definitely going to say it again. I cannot recommend highly enough that before you do any whitewater kayaking, or as you're learning to whitewater kayak, you also go on some kind of whitewater safety and rescue training, whether that's swiftwater rescue technician or whitewater safety rescue course or something like that. There's probably one in around your community or someone who can run them, and I cannot stress their importance enough to practice this stuff in a classroom setting and then be practicing it constantly in your free time, so that if you have to do it for real, you are very prepared and knowledgeable and know what you're doing, and you're not overwhelmed by like trying to recall things you maybe learned on a YouTube video. All right, so all that stuff out of the way. This week I'm just going to talk about one knot which is very useful, something I use all the time, which is a double figure of eight, or a figure of eight on a bite, it's also called. It's called that because the knot looks kind of like an 8 type shape. Hopefully you can see that. And then it has this loop here which we can clip into. If you want, you can tidy the end off, but I've left it pretty open just for now. We use this mostly for attaching. You put a carabiner through here and you can attach to, say, a kayak, or you can attach to someone who's doing a live bait rescue, something like that, things of that nature. There are other ways to attach to kayaks and attach to people doing live bait rescues. I'm not saying this is the only way, I'm saying it's one of the uses of this knot. Definitely do a little bit of Google searching for other uses of it, like it's out there. And the same with kind of a lot of rope work stuff, like it's like baking, like there's lots of different recipes to get where you want to end up. This is one way to do this knot for this purpose. It's not the only knot you could use to do the same job. It's not the only way to tie this knot. Okay, so I'm going to explain it the way that I always tie it. You don't have to do it this way, you can find your own way, but I'm just going to talk you through what I do, what to look for, and what to expect, and hopefully that helps you, and if it does, great. Okay, so figure of eight on a bite. What is a bite? A bite is just a fancy climber's word for a length of rope, right? So this is your length of rope. If you double it over like this is a loop, or I would call it a loop, right? But the terminology that people use is a bite of rope. So I don't know why that is. I have no idea what the origin of the word bite is. I definitely should have Googled it before I started recording this video, but I haven't, and there you go, that's what I know. So how do I tie a figure of eights on a bite? Well, the other name for this knot is called a double figure of eight, or rethreaded figure of eight. That comes more from rock climbing, so you're going to make a figure of eight, like a single figure of eight, which looks like this. Whoop. And as you can see, that looks like an 8, but as you can see, it's 1, and it doesn't have a closed end, doesn't have a loop that you can tie into. So that's what a single figure of 8 looks like, but we're interested in the double figure of 8. I'm going to show you the easiest way. Take your rope from the end, make sure there's no knots in it, get about a foot-ish, about a foot of rope-ish, maybe like 18 inches. Hold it right there, so those two ends are now side by each. About 2/3 of the way down, I'm going to put my fingers and then let go with this hand. See how that's kind of flopped over. I'm going to take my bite, my loop of rope, and go across. And then I'm going to come around the back of that cross and then back up through here. And then I've got my nice and tidy figure of 8. Let's see that one more time. Got my end of rope, let that go, so those two are side by each. Hold this one about 2/3 of the way down, let that go. Go across, around, and up the back. Ooh. And now I have my figure of 8 on a bite. You'll notice that I'm trying to keep this loop as small as possible. I want it to be big enough that a carabiner can go in there and basically not any bigger. It's just a waste of rope to have a big loop. It's completely unnecessary, but it also creates quite a significant entrapment hazard. Like if you can get your fingers jammed up in there, that's not good either. On this other end, I've left it just kind of loose. I always want to make sure I have more than a fistful of rope here as just a general rule of thumb. If I wanted, I could tidy this end off or tie it off, but I'm not going to bother just for this video. It's not super necessary, like you don't have to, it just looks nicer. As far as I know, there's no safety reason why you have to have a knot in here. It's just like, it's a bit tidier, it's a bit neater. Generally speaking, you want to keep your knots like fairly neat and tidy because that's kind of when they're in the strongest. If you have your knot kind of all tangled up, so it's not in good shape, so it's not going to function as well. Now this knot can be, once it's been under a heavy load, it can be quite difficult to untie. Normally you're just trying to push the ends together, break the back and get it open. If you are having a tough time, just work on getting one end at a time turned over, and that should help you out. A couple things to look out for when you're tying this. If you make a mistake, so if you kind of got lost about halfway through, if you make a mistake, you're going to end up tying an overhand knot, which is going to look a bit like this. So this is just with one wrap around without two wraps around. Overhand knots is still fine, but they're a bit harder to undo once they've been under a load. Whereas the figure of 8's a bit easier to undo even after it's been like really loaded up. The other way this can end up is a figure of 9, which is where you go around one additional time. It doesn't really look like a 9 in my opinion, but whatever. So that's what a figure of 9 looks like. These are a bit easier to undo if your rope's been under a lot of tension or coming on and off a lot of tension. But they need a little bit more rope to tie, so maybe not exactly what you're looking for. Yeah, so that's been a figure of 8 on a bite, or a double figure of 8. If you're a rock climber, another way to tie this rope is called a rethreaded figure of 8, but we're not talking about that today. We're just talking about this regular old double. Try and keep your loop small, like smaller than this is better. This is kind of on the bigger side in my opinion. Yeah, so like I said, take a Swiftwater rescue course. Cannot say that enough. I really think it's great to practice stuff like this. Knot tying is useful. Once you know how to do it, you'll find yourself doing it more and more often. But you do want to know roughly how to do it and what to look for and what's not good. So keep that stuff in mind. And yeah, if this video has been helpful, let me know in the comments, and I'll try and do some more of these knot tying for kayaker type videos, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.